Welcome, everybody. This is the Rotary E-Club of Silicon Valley, and every week we bring you the story of people who make the world better, locally, globally, and digitally. Rotary is an organization of 1.2 million people around the world, 36,000 clubs, and here, there, and everywhere. And we're dedicated to the idea of service above self, that joy and meaning that comes from helping others. And if you're interested in Rotary, take a look at our website, rotary.org. If you are specifically interested in our highly flexible, online, asynchronous, and geographically distributed club, you might look at our site, which you can get to via rotary.cool. So, our speaker this week is Connie Cheren, and Connie is going to talk to us about effectiveness in service in ways that I am really excited for us to dive into. Connie, those who want to read about your full bio can do so by pausing this right now and taking a look on the page where you found this recording. It might be on our podcast page or our YouTube channel or our club page, but regardless, there is plenty info there. She is the founder and president of Partners for Care, and we're going to hear about this nonprofit as a part of the work we do here today. Connie, welcome. I hand the mic over to you.
Thank you, Rustin, very much. So I appreciate the opportunity to talk. And I want to first and foremost say that some of you could be doing this lecture. And so I'm not assuming that something that I say you don't already know. So I'm humbled in realizing that. But I just want to share my story and what I have learned. So as he said, I'm a nurse and I'm a healthcare consultant and have been all my life, and I'm a founder. I come late in life to some of this work. I always wanted to work internationally, but didn't do it until later in life. So I founded Partners for Care. I work pro bono for that organization and then support myself by working as a healthcare consultant. I funded that organization 18 years ago. I began, I was shocked when I realized that what I was doing was causing harm. Because as healthcare professionals, we are taught first, do no harm. And so when I was asked to start reading some of the material about causing harm, I really reeled back. I'm like, no, I don't want to read that because if I'm doing harm, I really don't want to know that. And so I was a little resistant. But then, of course, I read it and it truly changed the way that we work and that we serve. And I am not naive enough to believe that we still don't cause harm. I think as what I believe is that we are walking that path to try not to cause harm. So what do I mean? So our tenets that we work with and how we changed is that we work to change. The first thing that we do now is never do for others what they can do for themselves. That alone stopped me right there. I'm like, okay, well, then what do we do? And I believe that the majority of the people that serve, especially through Rotary, intend to help. They don't go into this without wanting to help. So these awarenesses that I have learned. So don't do for others what they can do for themselves, which means we have to know what they can do. We tend to go into communities and look at the deficit as opposed to going in and look at the assets. And I know that Rotary has changed. I was in Calgary, and they are now changing the terms to go in to do asset assessments as opposed to deficit in the beginning. So we have to know what people are capable of doing. I'll give you a quick example. So we've opened so now that we've learned all of this, our whole role in Kenya now in East Africa is to help people have employment. They just want jobs. They just want to be able to send their children to school and feed their children and send their children to school. So we create jobs. And any one day we have thousands of people in schools learning trades. They learn to sew, they learn computers. And so here we receive our sewing machines, and we've received about 675 sewing machines in the country. And where they're coming in here in the US, I laugh. A lot of women have sewing machines in their closet and they're not using them. So they're happy to donate them. And then they need to be repaired. So the team that gets those, there's only two people that repair them, and they can only repair a certain number. So I said, just send them to us unrepaired. And they were like, what? How could we do that? How could they repair them? I said, trust me, they can repair them. So after negotiating for quite a while, literally months, and these are good people, months, they sent us 60 unrepaired sewing machines. In Kenya, everybody's called a fundi. Those fundis were ready. They had everything ready. They tagged those machines they repaired them within 3 days, and they went out and set up 6 sewing schools with those. And so now we told the people here, okay, now send us a whole container of unrepaired sewing machines. Those people weren't bad people. They just didn't have any idea that they've been repairing sewing machines for a really long time, and they could do it quickly and they could do it effectively. We also turn them into treadles so that people can learn without electricity. But there's other examples of where we assume that people can't do things, so especially when we try to do medical camps. And because I work in East Africa, so many people go to Kenya. I can't go anywhere pretty much, including Calgary, that somebody doesn't say, oh, we went to Kenya, oh, we did this, oh, we did this. And now I'm getting bold enough to say, well, that you shouldn't have probably done because that didn't help. People are saying to me, like, we went to a county and we took nurses and doctors down there because they have no health care. I was looking at them and saying, have you ever looked at the country's healthcare plan? There is a dispensary in every single village area in that country. But again, they made those assumptions, and so they go down and do what other people can do. And the harm that is caused from that is that we give the message that it takes a doctor and a nurse to fly into a developing country in order to provide health care. And the other alternative was just fund the community health workers. They're everywhere in that nation. But that's just an example. The second is that is that relief should be short term. We love relief. We love being able to feed people I mean, not everybody, but a lot of people like relief versus development. Relief should only be short term. There are tribes in the world, especially in East Africa, that are now dependent on relief food. There's no development in those areas. And so then they become dependent on relief food. Development is slow, long, and hard and takes time. You cannot fly in on a plane and do development and leave. Development takes relationships and is a long term. But relief, and that's true even with your own families. It's like when we start giving relief, then as opposed to helping people develop themselves, employment, lending, and investing are always the best. Employment. I finally caught on that they just want jobs. They'll do the rest. There's that saying, everybody knows it. Don't give a man a fish. We all know that. And then it's like, okay, well, then we'll teach them to fish. No, they've been fishing for a really long time and they don't need you to teach them to fish, but they'll let you teach them. They'll say, okay, fine, you can teach me. They're not going to say they can't fish, but they'll let you teach them even though they can fish. So then people say, well, then what do we do? And they usually say it like that. I said, just buy their fish. Just simply buy their fish. It's about commerce. Then they'll take care of it from there. You don't have to teach them. You don't have to do those things. So as I'm closing, I've got a few more minutes here. Let me give you some examples. The one that I get really bold now about is I was at Calgary. This woman came up and she said, oh, our club wanted to help, and we gathered a whole container of used clothes and we sent them to Ghana. And I looked at her and I said, that was too bad. Why? And I said, because they can make their own clothes. And you would have been better to get sewing machines and to employ women to be able to make clothes and sell clothes. And it's always sad to me when I see a child in a tribal area that has Ohio State University shirt on, or worse, a Disney World shirt. We're just sending our used garments over there. And so employ people, they know how to sew, they know how to make their own clothes. Shoes was a really good example. Everybody got behind, buy a pair of shoes, send a pair of shoes. What was wrong with that? They get upset with me like, well, what's wrong with that? Well, there's lots of things wrong with that. Number one, I've been there when those shoes come in. Those are not the same expensive shoes that people are buying here, number one. Number two, they just displaced the local shoemaker. And those people are very sad for a while. They're like, well, I won't be selling any shoes for a while. And so that was causing harm in that community by somebody who's just trying to have a job. The same thing when we send volunteerism, when we go out and do what other people can do. I have people tell me, we went to Kenya and we built 3 houses. I said, do you think Kenyans don't know how to build houses? They've been building houses a long time before you decided you would go help them build, or you would build houses for them. So that again displaced workers. I asked people about people get really upset about medical camps. What's wrong with medical camps? Well, there's a lot wrong with medical camps. And the countries themselves are getting wise to it. They don't want that kind of. If you think of your local hospital, and ours here is Northside Hospital. If somebody came from another country and lined outside that hospital and started giving out free medication and free health care and drugs, what would our doctors and nurses here say in this country? So, of course, that would be silly. We wouldn't do that. And why it's harmful is people need to connect to their local practitioners, not people that are going to provide something, a drug, and then get in a plane and go home. They need their local practitioner. Everybody needs that. So, the last one that's really, really important to me is water. And so very frustrated with water. We still have 1,000 children under 5 die every day from waterborne diseases. Rotary's been putting in wells and they've been putting in doing boreholes and putting in filters. But it's always how you define the problem. The problem, that's access, and access is a problem. But what's the real problem? Children are dying from waterborne diseases. So they'll put a borehole in, or they'll even put a filter in. And I ask them, how is the person going to transport, store, and consume that water? Because if that water's not safe, then it is causing more deaths of people that are under 5. We can solve water if we just look at what is the real thing we're trying to do, which is to stop waterborne diseases. And again, I know I'm so excited about Rotary's new way that they're looking at all of that. And, I heard Erica speak, and she's in charge of WARSH there in Chicago. And, I just heard her speak again on Tuesday. I met her last year in Singapore, and she said, it is no longer about projects, you guys. It's not about a project. It's about working in that community to be able to develop how people can have safe water. So I think that's my 12 minutes.
Well, that's a really good 12 minutes. Thank you very much. I want to dive into to the wonderful topics that are part of this, but I'm going to introduce the group that we got first. Joining us from Oregon is Heather Edwards. Members in different parts of the globe. We've got in Texas, Rory Olson. On Catalina Island in Southern California, Ernie Rodriguez. In England, Steve Munns. I am Rushton Hurley. I'm in San Jose. And Connie, we're gonna dive into this. This is exactly the kind of thing that needs to be more of a discussion in Rotary for obvious reasons. But let's start with this idea. When you point to a lot of the different things that are more effective, you're essentially talking about the sustainability of commerce.
Right.
But there are plenty of places where there is a lack of capital. And so do you see capital, the provision of capital as investment? Do you see it as that difference between uh, choosing to show up and just working from a distance? Talk to me a little bit about what people in areas without capital can do to be able to help make things happen for themselves and how we can help them as well.
Rustin, I was in Singapore. I heard somebody speak about how poor are the materially poor, and he challenged the audience to ask how many people don't have cell phones. And where did they get the money to buy those cell phones? So sometimes there is resources, and I think the resources should come from in that community. I'm not opposed to capital, but I think again, it's not the answer. Just pouring money into community is not the answer. To me, it's solely development. And for us, we work in partners. That's why we have now 75 sewing schools in the country, is because we work in partners. We own the machines, which is a capital. And then we set up schools. In prisons, we set up prisons we set up them in refugee camps and in prisons and it's amazing to me when you give somebody a tool. See, to me, that's a tool. And when you teach computers, we've taught over 25,000 people skills so that they can get jobs. So that's how I would put capital in.
In doing what you do to assess assets as opposed to deficits, I thought that that was I think you said, we have to know what they can do. We look for deficits, but we need to do asset assessments. Do you choose to work with sewing machines because you know that there is a lack of sewing machines being produced there, right? Like are you applying the kinds of things you're talking about to that very specific and that's why specific space and that's why you do what you do in Partners for Care?
Yes, but we do much more than that, Russ, and that's just an example. So I am all in favor of bringing something to a developing nation that they don't have or that they can't purchase. But you have to watch. Once that happens, then you have to stop that because then you cause a problem. So if there were computers is a good example. There are not enough computers in the country of Kenya. So I think now we brought in 550 computers. And so, I'm not opposed at all in bringing in technology to the country and setting them up to be used, not to give them away, but to set them up for education. We make those, so there's still lots of people crawling on the ground in developing nations. That's so appalling to us. We can't even imagine. When people ask me, why don't you work here? I say, well, first of all, I've never seen anybody crawling on the ground here, and I don't know anybody who doesn't have a refrigerator. And we have 37 staff, and they're the employed people, and none of them have a refrigerator. So maybe in some mountain areas they don't, but poverty is real different when you're looking in the developing world. But we're now making they make the carts here, but we're also now making them in the country. And that was a challenge. They gave them, so the mobility, they're hand crank carts. They're wonderful. They last like 6 years. They're made here by volunteer men. We ship them in containers to the world. There's so many people still crawling on the ground. But that also was a struggle because they gave our director in Kenya these complicated, plans and had him in a conference room and showed him all of these video. He just looked at me and he said, I just took the cart, brought the fundies in, told them to take it apart and make it just like that. And they did. And so again, that's an asset to ask them. They didn't ask him, do you know how to make this cart? And they are making a wonderful cart. And people are shocked that they were able really to make that. Now that was capital. Because the carts can't be sold. So then that was capital. So sometimes capital is important.
Okay. So in terms of capital, let's turn to another example that you gave, because I think the details in this are the kind of things that allow people to better understand, where help and where harm happens, right? You talked about building houses for people, and to simply gather a group of people, travel somewhere, build houses. On the face of it, why not help them, construct their own houses? You look at an organization like Habitat for Humanity, right? Some of what they're doing makes sense in terms of going somewhere and building a house, right? So, how would you define the difference between going somewhere, building a house where it doesn't make sense, and going somewhere and building a house where it does? Can you kind of outline just the basic difference in that for people who are trying to wrap their head around the harm and help division?
Well, again, listen, I don't want to disparage any organization or any work that any organization does. I mean, right here in Atlanta, I did go with Habitat Humanity, and I did go to a country that needed houses. And I watched people that were sitting along the road after that earthquake. And my question after I came back was, why don't we employ them to build their own houses? And so to me, again, somebody recently said to me, everything you do should have an economy about it. And so again, that just clicked with me. These people are unemployed, and then you get the where there's corruption and all of those reasons why it can't happen. But I know there's corruption. There's corruption in every country. And so I know that. I've been taught that you'll never eliminate corruption. You just have to manage it. But I don't think that's an excuse not to employ people. Remember when New Jersey happened? We did not bring in people from another country. And there was lots of people in this country who said, jobs, jobs, look at the jobs. And so those became job and employment opportunities. And so that's just what I question. Is it the best use of resources? There was a lot of money to go to build houses. a lot. And so, is it the best use of a resource?
So there are a lot of organizations that seem to have worked from the same philosophy that you describe here. We had a presentation from World Bicycle Relief
Hmm.
some years ago, and they seem to be exceptional at getting tools in the form of bicycles in the hands of people who can then work with businesses, get expand their health care, get to their schools, things like that. Are there other examples of organizations that you've connected with where you think, man, they are really doing it right, and explain why, right? I think there's a certain set of people who are going to listen to you and be like, this is what I've been talking about, right? And they know it. There's another set who are like, really? We really? We're doing more harm than good? Like so it's work, right? What are the organizations that you've run across and why are they doing such an exceptional job, wherever it may be?
Rosen, I have to be honest, I've not run across that many organizations. I've run across people who said that they've read the material, they understand it, but when I ask them what they're doing, they're still doing the traditional way. I think it's just built inside of us, and I tell people this. I've never ever lost the desire to go to Kenya, go into the tribal areas, because we work in those tribal areas where they're still living in the manadas up there. They still walk 4 hours for water and their children still need to be rescued. And for me to rescue those children, I would just spend the rest of my days doing that and, bring them to hold them and take them in and get them health care and do all that. But that doesn't change much up there. We have 5 staff up there who do that. And so that's what I think is for my cost to do that. And again, you got to ask yourself, is it for us or is it for them? Is it something that makes us feel good? Or is it something that really is more for what they need? So I'm still looking, and I think that again, I would not hold ourselves out as being that one organization that is doing it. I think that we are trying. I think that a lot of, again, if you ask, so in healthcare, and I think in other areas, we're asked to do 5 whys. So if you ask why, what is the problem? Okay, they're the problem they don't have a house. Why don't they have a house? Well, they don't have a job. Why don't they have a job? Well, they don't have the skills to have a job. Well, why don't they have the skills to have the job? So you keep going down through those 5 whys, and then you get to what is the real problem, and that's what you work on. The real problem is not that they don't have a house. That's just an example. But what is the real problem? And then you work, and that's when you're going to find that's much more development and working. And I learned a long time ago images that we have done, just take Africa alone, we have done terrible, terrible to the continent of Africa. I mean, when we promote, support an orphan, and when I was younger, I asked myself the question, are there no end to orphans? Are we ever going to get there? And then when I started working, I realized that we don't use the term single and double orphan. To us, single orphan is just what a lot of kids are here in America. But there they use the term single and double, and lots of studies have been done to find out that they're not orphans, and they will put their children in a children's home because somebody says, we will feed your children, we'll send them to school. Well, and help the grandmother or the mother have a job so they can keep their children. Those are the things that began to make sense for me. But the images, we have to be so careful of the images that we portray out there. When people come to Nairobi, they're like, wow, Nairobi's a city. And I always try to tell people that. But yes, in the tribal areas, they are in manadas. But nobody lives in Manyatta in Nairobi. There's University in Nairobi. There's Mount Kenya University. There are professors. There are people who drive big cars. And so people are surprised because the images that we have portrayed about Africa make us all made me feel that everybody is poor. People are running around, children are orphans. So, and self-esteem is so important, Rustin. And when we go in and do for them what they can do, we step on them. We step on them. And I tell people, I'm trying to follow the leaders there. And they go, well, can't we walk side by side? I said, well, can we just follow them? Let them lead because you want them to have that self-esteem. You want them to be leaders. See, to me, that's all we want to do is to create that leadership and create that sustainability. And that's what we're working on very, very hard is to work on sustainability and to work on leadership.
Well, I'll talk to you more about the Ceroli Institute and the Global Uplift Project after the recording. But I'll
I'd
talk
love to know
to
more about them. Trust me. I
oh,
follow.
there are some fantastic organizations out
No,
there,
I would
and
love to know that. My world is probably too small. I need to know that. But I follow Dr. Fickert and, with his work. And so I get all of his, and, he's the one who wrote When Helping Hurts. And of course, Toxic Charity. I follow Robert Lumpton. But, I'll be happy to learn about organizations that are doing no harm.
definitely. So let me invite Heather to unmute and ask a question as well. She has one.
Thank you, Rushton. Thank you so much, Connie. My apologies for just being on audio. I have a question that I think dovetails Rushton's. I have recently in my district been doing a presentation about the photography aspect of this, like you said, the imagery that we use. And it is become controversial. And there is, like you say, a lot of resistance. And I was actually my co-presenter that I do this presentation with, we were reported to the district. There was a formal complaint lodged against us, and I I know it's because people want to keep doing what feels good. And I grew up on Sally Struthers. So that's the model of journalism when we document philanthropy that we're most familiar with. So I'm wondering if you have found, when you're having these conversations, particularly the hallway conversations, right, in Calgary or Singapore, what language do you use to, when you're saying, oh, well, you shouldn't have sent your awful used clothes to Ghana. What language are people most receptive to, especially when you don't have time to give them this master class?
Well, and Heather, I will say that that woman, I've never met anybody that got it so fast as she did. She was like,
Excellent.
wow, you are right. It's not
Nice.
me, it's the concept that is right. But she's
Mm-hmm.
like, that would have saved us so much money and effort. Oh my goodness, getting that through customs was awful. As far as the photography, in Singapore last year, if you weren't there, they presented the Rotary out of Chicago presented on photography, and they have some standards. So if you're
Mm-hmm.
getting resistance, you might look at that. And I
Oh,
went
I
up.
include that in my
Okay,
presentation.
good. Okay. Well, I went up to her and asked her, Heather, because we take a lot of times before and after photos for the donors.
Mm-hmm.
So, and after she spoke, I'm like, I'm never taking a before picture again. But I
Mm-hmm.
asked her, and then she said, no, no, that's okay. You're showing the before, but then you're showing what's happening after. So you leave it as that. So what do I say to people? I'm not sure that I don't offend people, Heather. I've never been reported, but I might be. So no, and I guess just the only thing, Heather, I'm sure you're doing fine, is just like I tried to do today, because people do get very defensive. They
Mm-hmm.
do. And especially when you say, well, maybe what you're doing is causing harm. Oh my goodness. Then they get really defensive, of course, and probably with the photography. So I just ask people to just think about it. And probably, Heather, those people that are getting the most defensive are the people later that are going to change their mind. So that's what I always hope
Interesting.
of. Yeah, because they're so defensive. If they were just interested, you see what I think they might be
Mm-hmm.
the ones that later go, wow, you're right. Because, and it sounds like you're very far along on the photography thing, but yeah, it is such a problem. I mean, the way that we do the images, and they say it anyway. I think you're probably doing fine and just ignore those people. Sorry.
I think you might be right. And I wonder if we have to, unfortunately, because the learning curve comes at the expense of the people we're trying to help,
It's
but
true.
I wonder if we have to develop ourselves just like you said, the long, slow, and hard
Yeah.
commitment to turning a ship around because we're so used to doing what feels good, and we have to change the way we do things, the way we fund things, and the way we document things.
Yeah. And to make us feel good, we want to make them look bad because how can we say we're rescuing them if they don't look bad? Heather, have you thought about this? This is just a thought, and you probably have already thought about it. Is if you look at those photos that they're using, ask them, what is your goal in showing this photo?
Yes, yes.
You've done that. Yeah. What do they say?
The problem is we don't always have time for question and answer,
Yeah,
or
it's
you'll get one person who, wants to share as we all do. You want to share every example, especially when it's a topic you find really engaging. So
sure.
maybe we need to just create more time for people to participate in the discussion.
Yeah, but none of this is easy, Heather, as you can see. Just, people get very sensitive. They're very dug into, the way that we've been doing things, just like Rustin brought. Well, if we're not going out and building houses, then what are we going to do?
Hmm.
I get that a lot. Well, then what are we going to do? When I take teams, and I don't take a lot of teams, and we don't do mission trips, that conjugates again another that they need these mission trips. And it's so insulting to, if you are faith-based, it's so insulting to those pastors that are on the ground trying to spread the gospel
Mm.
if you're in of that faith. And that you don't spread the gospel by flying in an airplane and landing and going out and doing that and counting the number of people that raise their hand. That's not how the gospel is spread. Again, if you're faith-based and that's what you're doing. But those people get very, very, very offended when you even bring that up. And so, I think it's just a learning curve for people over time. None of this is easy. You'll find a lot of defense. I love Steve Saint's work. He's the son of Nate Saint, the martyred missionaries that were out of Wheaton College that were killed when they tried to reach the tribe there. It's great stories. And Steve's written a lot of good books. And, he got it because he learned from the tribe people there. It's like, why do they keep coming over and doing for ourselves? Unfortunately, Steve was in an accident, and so he's had to pull back in his work. But his book is great. And he said to me one time, and it kind of goes what you said, Rustin. He said, Connie, this is like a big ship out there, and we're just trying to turn that ship a little bit, like little towboats, just trying to turn it a little bit. He would tell stories that he would go out and like talk to the dentalist group and tell them why they could help people do their own kind of dental work, and they would listen to him and be nice, and then go just do whatever they're going to do anyway. And so, Heather, you do get some of that. It's like, okay, well, thank you for that information, but we're going to do exactly what we want to do. But what I started to say is that when people say they want to go, everybody wants to go, they say to me, the very first thing Americans will say is, what are we going to do? What are we going to do? We have to do something. And sometimes I try to challenge them. It's like, there is no agenda. You're going to go and absorb and learn. And so, see, most of the time we want to go teach. How many times have you had people say you want to go learn? Nope, we want to go teach because we think that we're the smartest, and we're taught that way when we grow up, and it's hard to get it out of us. It's like, so most people don't say, I want to go learn. I want to go learn. I want to learn how they're living off $1 a day. I love it when Americans tell me they want to go teach money management. Really? Okay, well, how's your own finances? You know?
Fair enough. And Connie, fantastic stuff. I want to add a couple of quick items for anyone watching this video or listening to this podcast. We have referenced Calgary and Singapore several times in this talk.
Yeah.
These are the last two sites for Rotary International's annual convention that happens in the middle of each year. And lots of opportunity there to meet people who are doing all sorts of work around the world, get a chance to learn in detail what kind of things that they're doing, to hear from people who are working on systemic structures for building service opportunities that are effective. Rotary, I think, is doing a pretty amazing job of getting better and better at it over time, as big a ship as it is. All right. So all good there. Um, Connie, I'll hand it back to you in just a second, but for all of you who have taken your time to learn about the kinds of things that happen around the world, the perspectives of people who are seeking to be effective with the work they do to serve others. as exemplified in this talk today. We thank you. We thank you for taking your time. We hope that you will share the link to this video or to this podcast, that you will tell a friend like, wow, I heard this amazing podcast, and help them find it on their phone. They may be new to podcasts, but lots and lots of people out there, their need is for news of people making a difference. And we hope that you will share that this is a club, an organization where we are able to give platform to people who are doing some really, really amazing work. Leave us a message at the bottom of our club page. If this is where you found us, you'll find the discuss section, and you are welcome to offer thoughts on what you heard in this program or any other elements of our weekly meeting, available to our members anytime between Monday morning and Sunday night. As we always like to do, we hand it back to our speaker for the final word. Connie, what would you like people to have clearly in mind as they finish the video or the podcast?
I would say just what we said in the beginning is just look at what you're doing, look at why you're doing it, and just really pay attention to where Rotary is going, because Rotary is really working. And you're right, that's a huge ship out there. But they really do want to make a difference in the world, and both to their local clubs and to the domestic and to international. And so just challenge people to think about, what they're doing and why they're doing it. And especially with water, especially with water, because we had a booth we had a booth at Calgary, and we had the water safe pack there. And I didn't meet anybody that didn't go, oh, I didn't think about that. So only one person said to me, nope, I just want to do access. That's it. Don't want to think about anything else. And I'm like, okay, well, how's that working? But Erica was taking care of that in her talks. But again, we can solve these public health problems. We just need to do it in a smart way and just finish the job out there.
Absolutely. Thank you. Thank everyone. We will see you next week.